You know, if you've ever read Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, you know the feeling. Right from the get-go, there's this heavy, almost unshakable sense of tragedy just looming. It feels less like a character making choices and more like a force of nature just pulling Anna towards her fate. It's an absolute masterpiece of literary design.
And Tolstoy himself, well, he just nails this tension perfectly with lines like this. The whole novel is really a study in these massive conflicting forces. You've got love versus duty, freedom versus social rules, light and shadow. You can feel the pull of these forces on every single character, in every decision they make.
Okay, so let's really dive into this, because this is a wild idea. What if we could actually demonstrate, using formal logic and math, that Anna's tragic end was the only possible outcome given the rules of her world? I mean, think about that. Her fate wasn't just probable, it was provable.
To even begin to wrap our heads around that, we have to kind of shift our thinking. We need to stop seeing a novel as just a story and start seeing it as a system, a world, with its own set of unbreakable rules. And this brings us to this really fascinating concept, the reproducible paracosm.
Think of it like this. A reproducible paracosm is basically the master blueprint for a fictional universe. It defines the absolute core logic of that world so precisely that any story told within it, whether it's the original book, a movie, even a video game, has to follow the same fundamental truths to really be considered a faithful version of that story.
Now, what this blueprint is made of is really the interesting part. First up, you need a core sketch. That's your cast list, your key plot points, and how they all connect. Then, there's something called coherent gluing, which is just a fancy way of saying everything has to fit together without contradictions. Third, you've got convergent rules, which make sure that actions lead to stable, logical consequences. And finally, consistent viewpoints, which means the story's deep truth has to stay the same no matter whose eyes we're seeing it through.
So, the big question is, how do we apply this abstract blueprint to a 19th century Russian novel? Well, we have to translate Tolstoy's world into the language of this formal system. And trust me, this is where it gets incredibly cool.
This table just lays it out so clearly. Characters like Anna and Vronsky, events like that iconic ballroom scene, they all become formal objects. Then you have the relationships between them, love, marriage, betrayal. Those are translated into morphisms. You can think of those as the connections, the lines of force telling you how the objects interact. But the real magic, the key to this whole thing, is that last row. Those internal forces driving the characters, they become something called modalities.
And let me tell you, these modalities are everything. They're not just character traits. They are the fundamental laws of a character's personal universe. They literally dictate what's possible and what's impossible in their world. So let's break down the 3 key modalities for Anna.
First up, we have knowledge. Now, this isn't perfect, objective knowledge of everything. No, this is what Anna knows, or more importantly, believes to be true about her world. She knows the strict rules of high society. She knows her own heart. She knows the consequences if her affair gets out. This modality basically draws the map of her perceived reality.
Second, there's desire. This is the engine. For Anna, this is that all-consuming, world-altering love for Vronsky. It's the force that pushes her to act, to break all the rules, to chase a different life. This modality represents the world that she desperately wants to exist.
And third, we have duty. You could almost call this one the cage. It's the immense pressure of social convention, her responsibilities as a mother to her son, all the moral laws she feels she has to follow. This modality represents the world she believes ought to exist. And I mean, you can already see it, right? Her desire and her duty are on an absolute collision course.
Okay, so we've got all the pieces on the board. The characters as objects, their relationships as morphisms, and these powerful modalities of knowledge, desire, and duty, pulling them in completely different directions. Now, we can finally assemble the proof. We can actually construct the tragic equation that defines Anna's life.
You know, Tolstoy was so clever, he actually gives us a kind of control group right there in the novel, the character Levin. His journey is full of struggle too, but his system, his own desires and duties, eventually finds a balance. He finds a way to make his world coherent, stable. Anna, on the other hand, is trapped in a completely unstable system. Her desire for Vronsky and her duty to her family are just fundamentally, mathematically, irreconcilable within the rules of her world.
And this right here, this is the heart of the proof. Anna's situation isn't just difficult, it's a logical paradox. The mathematical model shows that there was no stable state, no coherent solution available to her. There was no possible outcome where she could satisfy the rules of her world, her desires, and her duties all at the same time. The system of her life just couldn't compute a peaceful resolution. It was impossible.
So this is where the logic of this world becomes just ruthless. The system starts eliminating possibilities one by one. Could she go back to her husband? Nope, the model shows that's impossible given the strength of her desire. Could she live happily with Vronsky in polite society? Absolutely not. The rules of duty in her world make that impossible. Every escape route is logically sealed off, forcing the entire system toward the only outcome left on the table.
And this is what's left, a total system collapse. You know, in the language of this model, this isn't just a sad ending. It's what's called the unique absorbing normal form. That's a very technical way of saying it's the single, final, unavoidable state that the entire system was being pulled towards from the very beginning. It is the mathematical equivalent of fate. So, what's the point of all this? Is this just a really complicated way to analyze a classic novel? No, the implications are so much bigger. This whole framework offers a profound, really a brand new way to think about what makes a story, well, a story.
What this framework pretty much guarantees is that a story's core truth is hardwired right into its deep structure. It means any adaptation, a film, a play, whatever, that preserves Anna's essential conflict between desire and duty must, logically, arrive at the same tragic conclusion. To tell her story faithfully is to prove her tragedy all over again. The heartbreak is literally baked into the source code of the world itself.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. I mean, think about Romeo and Juliet or Oedipus Rex. Are their fates also logical inevitabilities? What other timeless stories out there are not just powerful narratives, but elegant, unbreakable mathematical proofs just waiting for someone to decode them?